hadn't exactly planned on making this post into a video, but here we are. I wanted to cover a topic that I don't normally cover, and some people are going to think that I'm getting all political. So I want to say, first and foremost, I don't do politics. I don't do it. I'll leave that to people who want to play really stupid games. I just do logic. So I put up a post on Facebook where I laid out that it's frustrating looking at the different sets of prospecting regulations and rules that are across Australia. There are different rules and regulations in every single state. And over the last 6 years that I've been doing this full time, the way that those laws have been delivered to the mining public have become purposefully convoluted and grey. Let me explain that. One of the most basic things that you have to do in Victoria is know where you're allowed to prospect. There are a couple of ways that you used to be able to do this. Back when I first started this full-time in 2016, one of the ways you could do it would be to get onto the Parks Victoria website, which would have a link to a map database, and that map database would give you a topographical map of a particular area that has gold in it. So for instance, say Reedy Creek, Victoria, where I do a lot of prospecting, the map of Reedy Creek would have a very obvious and specific outlined area of where you were allowed to prospect, and you could download that map for free off their website under their letterhead. Therefore, if you had a ranger or someone who needed to check that you had a miner's right and that you were doing the right thing, came up and questioned you whether or not you were in the right place, you could pull that map out and say, this is where I believe I am. This is the information under your banner. This is what I think I'm doing correctly. Tell me if I'm wrong, we can move on. And that map literally had saved me a couple of times. I had a couple of rangers tell me I wasn't allowed to be somewhere. I pulled their maps out, I put it on their car, and I said, that's where we are, and it says that I'm allowed to prospect there. And they went, yep, no, you're totally right. I got my location wrong, and they walked off. So that was one tool that we as prospectors could use to make sure we're doing the correct thing. That doesn't exist anymore. All those maps still exist, but you have to dig for them. There's no longer a simple link for you to just be able to download them, right? So that seems like a really small thing. But then there's the exempt rivers and streams list in Victoria. Now, this list is a list that back in the late 1800s was created to tell prospectors where they could and could not build living structures on their claims. So back then it was a lot easier to register a claim. They were a lot cheaper, and part of registering a small claim or having a miner's right was that you were allowed to keep livestock and build dwellings. But they didn't want dwellings built on every single creek, and this came back to the water board that was created in the late 1800s to protect farm and agricultural land. So that list was originally created so that you didn't build a house on your claim and keep cattle where it could destroy water with effluent and various other things. Seems reasonable enough, except for the fact that today the exempt rivers and streams has been bastardized into places that you're not allowed to prospect. That's not what the document was created for, but that's what it's turned into. And the problem with that is it lists almost every single river delta in Victoria, including places you are allowed to prospect according to the Parks Victoria website when they had those maps up. Back in 1972, I have the manual from 1972 of the New South Wales Fossicking Guide. It's over 200 pages long, and it came in a hardcover book. And it showed you not only how to build a timber shaft on a miner's right, not a claim, a miner's right, what I currently hold today. It showed you how to build a timber shaft. It also told you how many head of cattle you could have on a miner's right if you were working that ground. Today, that same document is 4 pages long, and it lists all the equipment you're not allowed to use, and that's about it. And then the same document in Victoria, again, it's about 4 pages long, and it only tells you what you're not allowed to do and that you should stay legal. And it also has a section of suggested things to do. And a lot of those suggested things to do are being, for safety precautions, are being used by Parks Victoria, the rangers, as a law to get prospectors in trouble. But they're not laws, they're just suggested safety tips. It's their own words. So I've ranted on about that for long enough. I put that up on Facebook, and then I've had a few people leave some. I knew it would start some trouble, but I had a few people leave some comments. One person in particular, I hope he watches this, because he goes, "Oh, what? I'm sick of you having a bitch about, them locking up more land because Australia's been pillaged and destroyed for hundreds of years, and national parks are a good thing." They're not, and the data supports the fact that they're not a good thing. They increase the level of firewood on the ground as well as tree debris, which means that we have massive firestorms through National Park, and I know that because I lived through three of them, where those massive record-breaking fires that killed hundreds of people and destroyed thousands of homes and tens of millions of acres of land were all started in national parks, every single one of them. National parks have more incidences of dumping rubbish. They have more incidences, or they have more coverage, should I say, of things like blackberries throughout their entirety. They are understaffed, they are underfunded, and they lock up the bush to the point where nothing gets used and nothing gets done in them. And because now we have things such as invasive species such as foxes, rabbits, deer, pigs, those animals go in there and they completely destroy the habitat for native species. This is all documented, by the way. You can look up all those analytics and stats from the Sporting Shooters Association of Australia. All that information's out there for the animal side of stuff. Then, this is what I love, right? Then, the land that's set aside for the public and future generations that you can't actually use for anything other than going and looking at the blackberries and the foxes and whatnot, they try to get those things under control by using things like 1080 baits, which then, if you know my history, you know how I feel about that. A proven non-effective method of controlling pests, and yet super toxic with no antidote to multiple other mammals. They did a study in the Strzelecki Ranges, I believe it was, where they dropped 150, or they placed 150 baits for wild dog control, and they found that of 150 baits, 149 of them were taken by quolls, native quolls. 149. One of them was taken by a fox. That's a pretty crappy rate to go into it. And as far as the Australian landscape being pillaged, not really. I mean, if you look at the landmass that's out there, that's completely uninhabited, completely unsearched, not utilized for almost anything, we have 25 million people in a country that has the same landmass as North America, that has like 350 million people. I'm fairly confident that most of Australia is pristine and untouched. Yes, we have a responsibility to make sure that we do not damage a delicate and unique ecosystem, for sure, but hobby prospecting, even on large scale, where you got thousands of prospectors hitting the same area like Reedy Creek, and it's still not stuffed. You know why? Because floods do more damage every single year. We see that. The silt in the water from prospecting feeds fish. I watch them eat at the end of my sluice. You can literally have a sluice discharging into the water, and the fish come up and they eat it. And the thing about like discharging into the water is it's not even constant. It's like one shovel. Like, it's slow. It's not like you got an excavator out there doing meters of dirt at a time. Almost every argument I've heard from the perspective of being a green, or almost every single argument I've ever heard for locking up the bush is factually wrong, and you only know that if you've spent any time in the bush. Like, I have spent my entire life in the bush, hunting, camping, prospecting, photography. I've done it. I'm telling you now, the laws that are in place for things like prospecting, not even talking about shooting, hunting, fishing, camping, four-wheel driving, the list goes on. Yeah, there needs to be some regulation with it, for sure. But what we've currently got is ridiculous. So there's my rant. Take it as you wish. I'll die on this hill because I know I'm right. All right, guys. Bye.